One more time. Lesbians don't have dicks.
All right. Okay. Turned out to be a lovely day here in Melbourne. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. Absolutely thrilled to have you all here. It's our first Women's Action Group first Speaker's Corner event for Melbourne. Yay! My name is Michelle. Hello, everyone. And thank you to everyone, the woman who helped organise this event, and hello to everyone watching the live stream. I acknowledge that we meet here today on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Gulunjeri Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge the pioneering woman of Victoria to whom this beautiful garden, it's really gorgeous, is dedicated, and in which we gather today to hold our very first Women's Action Group Speaker's Corner. Today's event is inspired by the exceptional work of Kelly J. Keane-Minshall, otherwise known as Posy Parker, big cheers and claps, and her incredible team, Standing for Women UK. My name is Michelle Uriaro, co-founder of Women's Action Group, Southwest Victoria, your MC for today, and I am a woman, an adult human female. I am not a cis woman, I'm not a womb haver, a vagina owner, a menstruator or a birthing parent. The truth is not bigotry or literal violence. Biological sex is immutable. Humans cannot change sex. No man can ever be a woman, and no woman can ever be a man. There is no such thing as being born in the wrong body. Whose body are you born into? And who's born into yours? Puberty is not an illness, and no one is assigned female or male at birth, but observed female or male, thanks to technology, in utero, as well as at birth. That our institutions here in Australia are captured by such false, irrational ideas, courtesy of American academia and queer theory, is outrageous. If we cannot accurately define what a woman is in language, then we cannot protect women in law. Biological reality exists regardless of our beliefs, regardless of our feelings, and regardless of the delusions of some politically and socially influential, porn-addled, autogynephilic men. Yeah, I didn't come here to party. In a time that demands we women yield our tongues, we surrender all reason, we sacrifice our children, and we apple polish at the altar of the most contemptuous, the most sinister, narcissistic, misogynistic, and racist of ideologies, otherwise known as the synthetic sex agenda, hat tip to Jennifer Black, we say no. No! Women's Action Group was started in 2019 by a small group of women, I being one of them, from regional and rural Victoria. Our motivation? The ongoing erosion of women's rights and child safeguarding. We have campaigned tirelessly, lobbying politicians and decision makers to resist changes in regulation and law that will adversely impact women and children. The main focus of our founding year was to object changes proposed to the Births, Deaths and Marriages Act that would allow sex self-ID in Victoria. We were joined in this fight, and subsequent others, by many women's groups around Australia at the time, such as the Victorian Women's Guild, IWD Brisbane Meanjin, Women Speak Tasmania, and the Wagga Feminist. Many individuals and groups of women and their allies came together to oppose gender identity ideology being forced upon our communities through culture and through law. Today, We are here because we wish to amplify women's voices. I think we're doing that quite well. That's doing quite a good job, isn't it, that Anne? Probably had to turn it down. Anyway, we're here because we wish to amplify women's voices, to uphold women's right to freedom of opinion and expression without interference, and in particular, to uphold our right to hold gender-critical views. Mindful State of 2021. The theme for today's event is the impacts of gender identity ideology in policy and in legislation. Speaking out in support of women's rights to exclude men comes at a high cost for many women. All women involved in this work have lost friends, connections with family, volunteer roles, paid jobs, and whole careers. We will persist until women are ensured of dignity, safety, fairness, and autonomy in every aspect of our lives. Let me be very clear. This is not a protest, not a rally, not a demonstration, and definitely not a march. This is a Speaker's Corner event in which, regardless of our individual political allegiances or beliefs, we come together to honour and uphold the voices of all women for all women. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, on that note, who wants to go first? Who wants to be our very first speaker? Bev. Yay! Come on up, Bev. Now, everyone just, this is Bev MacArthur, member for Western Victoria.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for being here. And as Michelle said, I first met Michelle some time ago, came to my office in Port Fairy to express her concerns and the concerns of many others about the births, deaths and marriages legislation that was going through Parliament. And I was totally supportive of the views, because I know, and it's most significant that we're here in a women's memorial garden today, because I know how hard women have fought for women's rights, and we must uphold them at all costs. And that's what I try and do in the Parliament every day. There's been other significant legislation that has come before us that I think has impacted on women's rights, and I certainly send a cheer and a cheerio to Senator Claire Chandler, who has been a champion of women's rights, particularly as it relates to sport. And I do not think it's appropriate that men participate in women's sport. It's not likely that many women want to participate in men's sport, but there are, of course, some sports where men and women compete equally, in the equestrian field, in the shooting field, but not many. And where it is a physical issue, I definitely think that biological men should not be participating in women's sport. And I think it's a great problem for mothers who have got young girls who want to be athletes and sporting heroes, to think that they might have to compete on the football field, on the cricket field, on all sorts, in the swimming area. And thankfully FIFA have come out and said that men can't participate at elite level in swimming, but we don't want them participating at any level, quite frankly. And I think that we need to encourage young girls to get into sport, but they need to do it in a fair way. There should be a playing field where girls are safe and able to participate freely. Like Michelle, I'm not a chest feeder, I'm a breastfeeder. Like Michelle, I'm a mother, a grandmother, a wife, and I think it's most important that we uphold the rights that women have fought so hard for such a long time. I don't think biological men should be in women's prisons. I don't think they should be in women's toilets, quite frankly. So I will do all I can with my limited capacities as a member of Parliament in the Upper House in Victoria, to make sure that your views are represented, and that we make sure women retain their rights and they become even more important than they certainly are being eroded away at the moment. So thank you all. It's great to be here with you, and congratulations on your work, Michelle.
Thank you, Bev. Correct me if I'm wrong, you were the only one to cross the floor for the conversion, for the gay convert. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so who would like to come up next? Oh, here she comes. Sonia, look out.
Thank you. Here in this Pioneer Women's Memorial Garden, I'd like to acknowledge all the women that have come before us. All the women that carry all the trauma from all the rapes. All the women that had their lives disrupted and were displaced and dispossessed and raped during the frontier wars in colonial times, and the abuse of women that has continued in this pioneer colonial ongoing experiment of Victoria, Australia that persists. Okay, for me there are three issues with transgender ideology. There's the harm to the individual, there's the harm to the entire group of women and girls, and there's harm to society. The harm to the individual cannot be understated. Cross-sex hormones are carcinogens. Cross-sex hormones are not meant to be administered to people. The lie that puberty blockers are reversible has taken hold, and it's taken hold amongst young people, and it isn't true. It simply isn't true. It stunts growth, and the people who take puberty blockers will never, ever be the same again. This is a tragedy for all young people, but when you're looking at young people from minority groups, from groups of people where, you know, the entire population of their group has been the victim of an attempted genocide, for these people to grow up and not have the choice to become parents is an absolute tragedy. The harm to all women and girls comes in that we can no longer exclude men. We no longer have the right to say no to men. Men can come anywhere they please. Men can come into our sports, into our change rooms, into our toilets, into our domestic violence and homeless shelters. They can come into our... Fuck that. They can come into our rape crisis support groups. They can come into our miscarriage support groups. Never, ever, ever underestimate the depravity of men that seek to insert themselves into women's business. Women should be allowed to say no. We demand the right to no to men. No to men in women's prisons. No to men in women's hospitals. No, no. The greater harm to society comes to everybody. There are laws that have been enacted with such meaningless language. Laws have been enacted full of words, terminology and phrases that have no legal meaning. No legal meaning. This affects everybody. This affects everybody. This affects what we can say. This affects that we can tell the truth. We can tell the truth. We can see before us a man and call him a man. This affects that women can say to men. All right. This is really, really damaging, and we will undo it. We will not rest until this is undone. Thank you.
Yeah!
Thank you, Sonia. That was riveting. Actually, we'll just take a quick break because we're just trying to fix our camera holder thingy. Won't be long. Thank you. Hang on, let me just... Sorry, can you flick that off first? Just while we're doing this. Thank you. Okay, go. Well, that's it. It's this, it's that back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not...
You have to kind of keep it tilted back. It's stripped, so it doesn't actually go fully tight.
Oh, see? It won't, yeah. If I let that go, it'll just spin. And now it's...
Hold on.
It's got more of that than that.
So you want it there?
No.
What is this? We just need something to counteract this. Hold on.
Yeah, I'll hold that while you're looking there.
No, hold on.
What about another phone?
Just going to drape something over it.
Just drape it over.
Yep. The counterbalance. Oh, oops, sorry. Get it where it needs to be. But before we start, all we have to do to get this record, I'll push record, and you can just sit here so that you can hold it really level, or whatever. Yeah, hold it really level. Yeah, I'll
get it going.
As long as you see the time ticking down in this corner, you're recording. If not, flag at me and I'll come in, because I want to get my speech on. Yeah, I hardly ever get my speech recorded.
All right, and I'll need to keep it on.
Don't bloody fall off the back.
Okay, I think we've got it sorted. We have a workaround that I think is quite ingenious. Just no one go near the tripod. Thank you. Okay. All right, our next speaker is Jessica. Come on up to the mic, Jessica.
You want me to hold something?
Oh, Louise asked us.
You want me to hold something?
That's okay.
Hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Jessica Williams. I have a message for women in Victoria and across Australia. As Millicent Fawcett said, courage calls to courage everywhere. Please, if you're able to do so and you're safe to do so, speak up. We need you to join us. My message to our elected leaders and to the candidates in the upcoming Victorian state election is this. Women and men will be voting one way or another based solely on a particular party's stance on gender identity ideology. Provisions for gender identity ideology do not meet Australian legislative standards and are clearly causing harm to children and women. Stop supporting motions, policies and bills that embed gender identity ideology into Australian law. I encourage everyone in Victoria that is concerned about child safeguarding, women's rights, the safety of imprisoned women, or everyone's right to hold their own beliefs and political convictions to send an email to candidates in November's state election about this issue. I will personally be focusing on Labor candidates because I do care about and lobby politicians regarding so many other important issues. I believe they can come back from this, but we need to engage with all of our elected leaders and candidates on this issue. The point is that we need to speak up. We have to speak up. And we have to get our leaders to put an end to the human rights abuses that are being caused under the guise of inclusivity for gender identity ideology. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Who would like to come and speak next? Come on up to the mic, Kate. Dragonfly. There you go.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm nobody. But I'm going to speak up about this because it matters. And I think that if you can, you should. This is a just cause. Women's rights are a just cause, and we have every right to demand our own spaces, freedom of association. Lesbians are female, homosexual women. Come on. There's no male lesbian anywhere ever. That doesn't happen, and women are allowed to say so. So even if you know one, if you can, say something. This is a just cause. Thank you.
Kate is right. No man can ever be a lesbian. I forgot to say that, I think, in my opening speech. But that's a very, very good point. You know, there are certain women who this, ideology obviously impacts, or a gender, I should say, impacts, first and foremost. and that is women who are in relationships with these men who decide, these men decide middle age that they're a woman, and, you speak to these women, they are called trans widows, and the abuse that they suffer at the hands of these men is absolutely astonishing. And then the next, of course, would be lesbians, men telling them that they're lesbians and therefore they must date them. That's just rape culture. Anyway, on that note, who would like to go next? Come on up to the mic, Lou. I'm standing. There you go.
Hi everybody, my name's Louise.
Just hold it up to your mouth. That's
Yeah?
it. Yeah, that's it.
So I'm going to talk to you as a nana, and how the trans ideology has impacted me. I'm now nana to 3 little boys, and they're primary school age and kindergarten age. And they're being taught right now that a boy can change into a girl. And that just blows my mind that my little grandsons are growing up actually believing that. And they're being taught from teachers who are in the main forced to teach that to our kids. And that terrifies me, that they're growing up in a world that is, they're lying to our kids. There's no other way to say, like, it's an absolute lie, and everyone is meant to be kind, they said. Well, it's not about being kind. It's about realising that, first of all, children should be told the truth. And hearing people talk about the trans women are women, the mantra that gets screamed at you if you dare to question it, it's just the whole thing completely blows my mind. What's happened to me now as an older woman, and it's not just as an older woman, when I'm out, I'm looking at men, because now, I mean, a man who looks like just your regular man can be a woman, and I won't know it, but as soon as you say, hi mate, or you can get screamed at. That hasn't happened to me, but it's happened to others. I know someone that was bashed and ended up with quite serious injuries because someone knew them as standing up for women's rights, believing in biology, and believing that women are not men, and men will never be women. When I go out, I mean, just even to go to the pool, right? I don't want to go to the pool because I don't know who's going to be in the change room. I don't want a bloke in there. Blokes shouldn't be in there. Blokes in women's bathers shouldn't be in there. They're blokes. They need to be in the men's change room. I don't care what their feelings are. I just don't care anymore. We need to really think about the be kind thing. Women, I think, on the whole, are kind people. We're kind. Females are generally kind. We shouldn't be kind anymore. They've taken over our spaces because we've been kind. We hear about, what are they called, supervisors, or in a domestic violence shelter is a man who calls himself a woman. I mean, just the idiocy is like, I don't have all the words. It just is so wrong, and we don't know who's going to decide to yell at us, to yell abuse at us, to call us transphobic, all that garbage. It's just garbage. And we really need people, men and women, please step up, speak out. yes, it's going to be hard, because it's why people don't do it, is because they're scared. And it'll just take, you know, one or two in different groups to say, look, I really don't. I don't believe in this. I'm not going to call that person who's made us spout pronouns. And seriously, it's just bullshit. So on that note, thank you.
Leave the kids alone, someone said. Okay, before I hand the mic to the next speaker, I just want to say a few words from Lisa Owen, who couldn't be here today. She's actually the other co-founder. Actually, there's three of us, myself, Sonia, who's sitting next to me over there, and Lisa Owen. And she's asked me to read a few words for today. And she said, sending you all my love for a very special, inclusive day of female empowerment.
Yes.
Just gonna wait, hang on. Let's just do that. Why don't you cop that? Okay, cool. Okay. Helen really had it right when she sang, I am woman, hear me roar. We've come a long way, but we have a long, long way to go. We still have a long way to go because we live in a patriarchal society that is constantly creating new challenges to the well-being of women and children. Stand up, be proud, question everything, be aware and vigilant. But most of all, keep fighting the psychological and physical exploitation and entrapment of our precious children. Teach them to think critically and never ever let go of their hands. Love to you all, Lisa. Alrighty, our next speaker has been crafting her speech for the last 2 months. No, she hasn't. Come on up. You can sing who you are.
Hello, I'm Holly Lawford-Smith. So last week, the University of Melbourne held an event, which many of you were at, looking at the participation of public bodies, including universities, in the Australian Workplace Equality Index, run by ACON's Pride and Diversity Group. The index is arguably one of the main vehicles pushing gender identity ideology into workplace policy. Now, as we're all aware, it's not easy to get gender identity ideologues into the room with their critics. They usually refuse invitations on the grounds that they don't want to legitimize debate with their critics. Or that they're not safe. Or they accept the invitation and then they pull out at the last minute. So I'm just going to start with something positive, which is that I think it's genuinely to the credit of Finn Mackay from the UK and Julie Peters here in Australia that they participated in the event. I think it's also to the credit of the University of Melbourne that they supported the event, and to the credit of the academic lead of the event, Professor Cordelia Fine, that she was able to pull together people with such different views to have this difficult conversation. Now to the negative. One participant who did pull out at the last minute was Nikki Alkin from ACON's Pride and Diversity Group. And this was a great pity because some of the items in the AWEI create conflicts of interest with other workplace minority groups. And I think many of us who signed up for the event would have liked to hear those conflicts acknowledged and addressed by a representative of the group that created them. I'll talk in more detail about a couple of items in a moment, but first let me make two general criticisms of the AWEI. First, it homogenizes the LGBTQ. Yes. Very occasionally during the 20,000 word document, an item will in fact separate out sexual orientation, trans and gender diverse status and intersex status. But usually, for example, in the entire section on staff LGBTQ networks, the LGBTQ is treated as a single entity, just like an employer might work to establish, say, a women's network or a disability network. There is no acknowledgement of the tensions between the LGB and the TQ, which come from TQ ideology attempting to erase the standard LGB understanding of sexual orientation in favor of attractions between gender identities. There's no acknowledgement of lumping together the LGB together with the TQ. There's no acknowledgement that lumping together the LGB with the TQ when it comes to staff networks will in fact end up meaning pushing out anyone who disagrees with TQ ideology. So the items in the AWEI may be well-intentioned, but when they're achieved in a social context in which there is aggressive pushing of TQ ideology, they can end up working against the interests of the very groups they were set up to help, including any LGBT, trans, gender diverse, or intersex people who are not true believers in the gender identity ideology. A second criticism of the AWEI is that for much the same reasons just noted, which is a lack of acknowledgement of the ideological context, some of the items risk setting back work that employers have done towards women's workplace inclusion. And the blame, I think, is shared here between the AWEI and the workplaces. So the Pride and Diversity Group need to rethink how to advocate for LGBTQ workplace inclusion without setting back the interests of women and those LGBT people who are not on board with TQ ideology. And workplaces, including mine, the University of Melbourne, need to rethink outsourcing their moral conscience, as Alan Davison so nicely put it at the event, to diversity and inclusion benchmarking schemes. Those schemes are designed to advance the interests of a particular minority group, and they may do that in a way that brings a certain controversial ideology along with it. So it's up to the workplaces that use those schemes both to watch out for possible conflicts of interest with other minority groups and to check that the schemes are genuinely working for inclusion and equality rather than pushing to have a certain set of beliefs and values institutionally entrenched. UniMelb already has bronze status in the AWEI, and my hope is that UniMelb will not achieve silver or gold status, but rather will withdraw from the AWEI entirely. So in the time I have left, which is probably none, but I'm going to go on a little further, I'm just going to mention two sets of items from the 2022 AWEI in connections with changes I've seen my own employer make. And of course, it may just be a tremendous coincidence that these are both rewarded by the AWEI and changes that UniMelb has made. So item 16 of section 1, which is in the standing submission that can be rolled over every year, this refers to the company's internal documents and forms that collect gender information. And this asks for non-binary options and trans options to be included. But one way of earning full points on this item is to simply stop collecting gender information entirely. And this is worth 2 points out of a possible 200. And the next item, item 17 of section 1, is similar. It points to IT systems that collect gender information. And similarly, you can achieve it by stopping collecting gender information altogether, and that's worth the same 2 points. Recently, UniMelb announced that students can now access inclusive gender options in Student 1, which is the online student system. And when they were asked, the relevant staff confirmed that this gender identity information replaces sex information. And that means UniMelb is no longer collecting accurate data on sex. So they won't be able to monitor progress toward sex equality in different subjects or in study outcomes. So this is a clear conflict of interest with women. The AWEI is incentivizing employers to stop collecting sex data, and this hinders the monitoring of sex equality. Second thing I wanted to mention, and then I'm done, items 19 to 20 of section 2 are all about having LGBTQ employee networks, such as a staff pride network. So for 3 points, the network can have either distributed material on how to be an ally to trans people, or have done work to profile trans speakers or role models. For 3 points, the network can undertake activity to make LGBTQ women more visible. For 3 points, the network can undertake activity to make LGBTQ plus another minority intersection people more visible. And for 3 points, the network can work to increase the LGBTQ presence in other diversity networks, including women's groups.
And you get a Woolies rewards card.
So again, this could all be innocuous, but given what we know about what TQ ideology is like, we know that having a homogenous LGBTQ network in the first place is likely to mean anyone who disagrees with TQ ideology is pushed out. We know that encouraging a staff pride network to distribute ally material about trans people is likely to mean encouraging controversial beliefs and values, for example, pseudoscience about biological sex.
And social contagion.
We know that increasing the profile of quote-unquote LGBTQ women is not likely to mean lesbians and is likely to mean men with gender identities. And we know that pushing for LGBTQ inclusion in other diversity networks is quite possibly going to mean hijacking or subverting those other networks, as it would do when it means pushing men into women's networks. And on this point, the Academic Women in Leadership program that UniMelb runs as additional training for women staff is now open to trans women. There's much more I could have said, because as I've said already, these documents and items run to over 20,000 words, and I think there's a potential for conflict of interest in lots of the items. But these are two important ones, and I think they show that workplaces need to be a lot more cautious about who they're accepting diversity and inclusion training from and why. Thanks.
Can I just say, I want to pay huge tribute to Holly, because you've stood up in academia. It's not easy standing up for anything that's not conventional wisdom, so to speak, in the academic situation. It's not easy in the workplace situation. It's not easy in the political situation either. But Holly has done this. And you reached out to me after I made a stand, and we did a podcast together, and I was honoured to do that. I'm particularly honoured to be here with you today because I think you're a champion. And I certainly stood up for parents in the gay conversion therapy bill, because I didn't think it was appropriate that parents, psychological counsellors, even faith counsellors should be jailed for giving advice to potentially children with gender dysphoria issues. They need more psychological help, not less. And the many professionals that came to me said that'll take us out of the space when these children often, and I think it's appalling that children under 18 were going to be subjected to their parents not being able to even be informed about them potentially going through gender dysphoria, going through a transitioning process without the parents' permission or involvement. So congratulations, Holly, on the amazing work you do, and against all odds. It can't be easy, and I take my hat off to you.
It's almost like they're trying to do away with biological sex as being reality. Oh, hello, Jasmine. We have our next speaker. Come on up to the mic.
Hi everyone, my name's Jasmine. As my mother says, my daughter's famous for being a sacked breastfeeding counsellor, so I'm so proud. I just wanted to say, you know, the thing that really disturbs me about transgender ideology and the way it's marched through our society here in Victoria is, I mean, so many things, but that it's not just in a co-ed setting like universities or, you know, co-ed schools or, you know, parliaments, that it's in women's health. And I still, you know, every time I come across another example, I just still can't quite believe that medical professionals and women's health advocates have allowed this desexed, crazy, dangerous thinking and practice to creep into their organisations. And it really does make me feel like I'm going a bit mad when every time I come across another example, you know, and, you know, like within the Breastfeeding Association, you know, like over a year ago, it got to the stage where they were helping men to sexually abuse newborn babies, you know, and I just, and they won't even kind of be honest that that's what they're doing. Like you'll go, hang on, this is a man, he's trying to breastfeed his wife's newborn baby. Are you sure you want to support that? And they are supporting it. So, you know, I do have hope in humanity and in Victorians' common sense, but it is quite troubling how few people really know what's going on. You know, what's going on in our primary schools, what's going on in our secondary schools, what's going on in our universities, what the Parliament's doing, you know, and when we bring it to their attention through, you know, media work and advocacy and conferences and, you know, like I've voted Labor my entire life until the last federal election, and they just, it's like, I don't even know how to describe how captured they are, you know. And so, like, you know, journalists will ask them a question and they'll just distort reality so far beyond the truth. And I just, like, you know, like I've worked as a media advisor like my whole career, and I don't know how I don't know how they give the answers that they give, you know, like the press sacks, the things that they say, they're just such lies, you know, and like I think they must believe what they're saying. But even that is so scary, you know, like have they read the legislation? Anyway, that's a bit depressing. So, you know, I guess we just keep going and keep telling everyone who will listen what's going on. And yeah, we'll get there in the end, I hope. Thanks so much for organising this, Michelle.
Thank you so much for coming. Actually, that's a really good point in the media. I was thinking as Jasmine was talking, I read this morning, I've been up early this morning and logged into Twitter, as you do, at 5:30. And there was an article, I think it was Stuff New Zealand, maybe, I can't remember, but it was just so ridiculous. It was about a man who had basically tricked everyone out of money, right? And the article called him a woman. So it's about an article about a liar, and they're lying about the liar. Anyway, who would like to come up next? Come on up. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Hold the mic nice and
Hi.
Hi.
This is the first time I've spoken publicly about my views ever. I'd just like to say the trans movement is a movement led by men to the detriment of women.
Yeah.
As a young person growing up mainly online, you see it everywhere. And I've lost friends to it. I've lost my sister to it. And it's hard. It preys on mentally ill people. And this whole, sorry.
You're all right.
I think what's frustrating the most about it is just a rejection of science. All literature says, everything that's pointed to it, if a child goes through gender dysphoria, they get and are allowed to go through puberty, they grow out of it by the time they reach it. But it's scary to think, I think this movement has been led by dark actors. The WPATH, the world's leading trans health experts, have been linked to castration fetish forms.
Unix is now an identity.
Yep. And yeah, I just don't really know what to say. I guess the only thing I can say is that I'm confused and that the world's confused. But thank you for letting me speak.
And so we see, you know, how it can really, truly harm people, this ideology, this agenda, synthetic sex agenda. Anyway, who would like to come and speak next? Come. Awesome.
Sorry, I've come all this way, I'll bloody kick myself if I don't speak. I think what I have to say will lead on really well from the last two speakers. My name's Fiona and I work in healthcare in the public system in Melbourne. Hope they don't sack me for doing this, but whatever.
Let me know if they do it, I'll make it.
There'll be several useless meetings first and, you know, I'll go through a process. Basically as a primary healthcare worker in the public system here, I'm being expected, and my colleagues are being expected, not asked, expected, to buy into and profess bullshit about science and about humans. We're there to treat people with medicine, and we treat everyone who walks through the door, but I'm not going to pretend that a man is a female patient. And I have been put in a position several times where I have been expected to do that. And I'm always very careful never to document it. It's just the system, like the public system from the inside, has been completely captured by virtue signalling with the ignorance of actual science. I studied my degree starting in 2014. I studied human biology as part of that. None of this was mentioned then because it's not real. It's been in the last couple of years that this really, really seems to have crept in. Rainbow stickers on every door, trans flag stickers on every door, the lanyards, the pronouns in the emails, and all the rest. Actual male patients being registered officially as female on the systems. It is bullshit. We're just being asked to ignore reality and profess ideology. And I'm being asked to lie, and I'm not okay with it. Yeah.
Thank you for speaking up.
And thank you so much for not being okay with it. Okay, so who is wanting to speak next? Oh, come on.
If there's nobody else, that's all right.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Come on, dude.
I didn't think of anything to say. I didn't think of anything to say at all, as a matter of fact, but I think about it all the time. And I think about the fight as a lesbian for lesbian and gay rights. And I am incensed at the destruction of all the work that we did to get ourselves to a place in society where we could just be left alone, where we could just be ourselves and not have to worry about it.
When I moved to Australia, I came from a place where it was still a struggle. And I moved here and nobody cared. Everybody was fine. If I was in the hospital and my partner was by my side, they just assumed that was normal. Nobody gave a shit. But now they do. Now I get harassed from people who should be in my own peer group, I get harassed from lesbians in our lesbian gay rainbow group because lesbians are no longer welcome. Lesbians are no longer welcome because we say lesbians, now repeat it with me, lesbians don't have dicks. That has become a crime in some eyes. It's become a hateful thing to say. Well, then if you must call me hateful, that's up to you. That's your own dysfunction. Because I'm not a hateful person. I'm somebody who has fought hard to be who I am and get along in the world, and that's what I want to do. These people do not want to get along in the world. They want us to participate in their fetish. They want us to affirm them. I don't care if you know I'm a lesbian, if you come up, I don't want you to say, oh, I'm so happy to see a lesbian today. I don't care. But these people, if you don't acknowledge, if you don't speak to them as though they are special, that is a problem. That makes you homophobic. Makes you transphobic. And I am sick to death, not only of the misogyny of this movement, but of the homophobia of this movement. One more time. Lesbians don't have dicks.
Thanks, dude. Well, I'm glad to see you today. Anyone else would like to speak? Angie, you going to come and speak or not? Oh, okay. Anyone want to speak?
I think that was very successful.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of the speakers.
Now, usually at Speaker's Corner events, all the women go first and then the penis havers go last. So would the one penis haver like to come and speak? Come on up. Wonderful. Beautiful day.
It's a beautiful day to be a penis haver.
So just move that way. Just so you know.
Okay.
Yep, beautiful. Thank you.
So I came here to support my sister. I really got into the whole trans thing over the pandemic. I like Reddit, and I noticed that all of the good places I would go to, like Gender Critical, It's a Fetish, they all got taken down, and so because they're all transphobic apparently, and so I really got into so I'm quite interested in science, I'm quite interested in psychology, so and I kept noticing that so many serial killers have quite a number of paraphilias, and quite a common paraphilia is cross-dressing. It's sexual cross-dressing.
That's exactly
so
right.
you have quite a number of them who would engage in sort of quite nasty behaviours where they would steal women's underwear, and then that behaviour would escalate to murder eventually. So it was at that point that I started sort of to recognise that autogynephilia is quite a common thing in men. So if you go to any sort of pornographic site, if you go to chat rooms, you go to anything, you'll see two things. You'll see there's an enormous numbers of men who are quite clearly autogynephilic. And the second thing you'll notice is quite a number of people who identify with having a sissy fetish. Those things essentially, to me, are two sides of the same coin. And I think Blanchard said something to the effect of maybe 3%, somewhat similar to male homosexuality. So that number is potentially autogynephilic. So we're talking about quite a significant number of men in the general population. And we know with autogynephilia that it tends to escalate over time. So in the past, we would have groups like the Beaumont Society, where they would all undertake cross-dressing behaviours, and they had partners, and that was quite lovely because they would have dinner balls and things like that. The wife was quite depressed from the outside, but they were having a gay old time, and they described it as quite relaxing. But now what's happening is we're giving people permission to live their fetish in everyday life. And the difficulty with that is the more that a person engages with their fetish, the more those behaviors escalate. And we know that escalation can take a number of forms. But in the case of autogynephilia, that takes two principal forms in my view. First is the journey to transition sort of speeds up, and in actual fact, they're the more likely of the two types of transitioners to have their penis removed. So that's sort of like the ultimate manifestation of autogynephilia. Secondly is they tend to have quite a number of fetishes. It's quite interesting really. So you'll see numbers of pedophilic attraction among autogynephilic men. That's quite a significant population within that subpopulation. You see them with fetishes for wearing diapers, you'll see them with fetishes for a whole range of things. So, you know, the problem with that is when you get significant components of the male population who start believing these sorts of things, that feeds into other sorts of behaviours. So for example, inceldom, which is another really growing difficulty that as a population we're going to have to face, because we know that physical relationships are declining in the West. We looked at places like Japan, the rates of marriage have fallen dramatically, and we know that's happening in Australia. So we know that the rates of incel are going to be increasing, and when you combine that with a society that sort of accepts and really uplifts autogynephiles, I think you're going to create kind of a really big powder keg for quite a lot of violence. And we're seeing that with whenever women organise and they undertake marches, we see the violent reaction against women is pronounced. We see that it's beyond the scope of what you would see with other sorts of behaviours. And one other thing I would like to say before I finish, because I feel like I've spoken too much, is we know that there have been studies of transitioners, particularly in other countries. So I always laugh when they say gender identity is quite progressive, it's quite liberal. Well, is that really the reality? Because we know that it is actually those places that are the most homophobic that embrace gender identity, or they're the earliest adopters of gender identity, and they tend to be quite enthusiastic about its adoption. So in particular, I'm thinking about the Islamic countries, Iran, for example. Homosexuality is illegal in Iran. It's illegal in many countries. It's illegal in 80 countries. How many countries is it illegal to be trans in? 0. Iran, you're only able to be a homosexual male if you undertake a transition. That's fully funded by the government. So I see, what was I talking about? I got completely lost. Anyway, I'd just like to say that I see this as a terrible injustice that's happening to women. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I'm very happy to see some really spectacular thinkers like Holly, who I've read quite a lot about, and I'd like to be more involved, probably from the shadows, if I can be. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that about wraps it up. I will just say quickly though, most of you here have already heard me say this before, but I am a co-founder also for Manawahine Korero, thank you, who are also hosting our live stream today. Yes, shout out to Rex and to Di and Philippa. And I just wanted to quickly say that this ideology is also impacting our culture. So I was raised in my culture, and there was no mention of men pretending to be women because, you know, obviously that's the largest demographic from what I can tell, or even children being born in the wrong body. In fact, I mean, I would argue that to suggest that would actually be what we say tapu, which is sacred. And I'm probably going to say something a bit, I don't know, very native, but you know, in our culture, women are the life givers. You know, we are the ones that bear children. We are the ones that, you know, that we bear. Without us, civilization wouldn't exist. Men can put their seed anywhere, but once it's with us, it's up to, you know, our bodies actually do the magic and produce every single human being alive. So, and go mums. And, you know, we have seen many Indigenous cultures being contaminated with this agenda, with this ideology. I can't speak for any other culture, obviously, but I mean, humans can't change sex. It is a fact. And on that note, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming today. We're so thrilled, and also to Bev for attending. Thank you. We did ask quite a few MPs, and Bev was the one who was available today and was keen to come, so thank you so much. And that's it.
Maybe a group photo.
Oh yes.
Women MPs.
Yeah.
You know, because women have voted for all this stuff.
Bev is just saying make sure that everyone lobbies women MPs, and she's absolutely right on that. I totally agree. You can. We'll leave that one with you, Holly.
I'll just start emailing her.
I'd just like to say thank you very, very much to Michelle for all of the organising. It's been absolutely fantastic. Loads and loads and loads of work. And to Jess, of course.
Oh, thank you.
And me, I made the flag.
Yes.
Gorgeous. And Sonia. And really, God, we're fantastic. And we've just got to keep getting bigger and louder, and talk to everybody, encourage, make it not so scary. So that's super important. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, and we will have another one. Keep an eye out for your email, and it will be a Christmas get-together. Okay, bye.
Are people up for a group photo?
Yes.